The Nordic sandwich model. What if sandwiches were illegal? The sandwich panic. Imagine policymakers suddenly deciding that sandwiches pose a serious social problem. Reports circulate, arguing that sandwich culture conceals labor exploitation, unhealthy social norms, and economic coercion. Experts explain that no one would genuinely choose to assemble sandwiches if they had better options. They conclude that sandwiches are not really lunch. Rather, they are evidence of structural harm. This scenario parallels many debates about the adult industry. The work itself becomes the problem, and the people engaged in it are reframed not as workers, but as victims of a system that must be dismantled. Before delving deeper, it's crucial to ask a basic question. Can someone consent to making sandwiches? Of course they can. People choose to cook, prepare food, and work in restaurants every day. What matters is whether the person doing the labor is choosing to do that work and under what conditions. In most industries, this question leads to discussions about wages, safety standards, and labor protections, not whether the work should exist at all. The compassionate policy solution. Outright banning sandwiches would be unpopular. People like sandwiches. Workers depend on making them. Entire restaurant chains, some famously built on extremely low wages and high turnover, have made fortunes selling them. So, lawmakers search for a compromise that allows them to condemn the industry while avoiding the optics of arresting workers. Their solution is what they call a balanced approach, the Nordic sandwich model. The same logic appears in sex work policy debates. Selling sex is framed as something workers should not be punished for, but the surrounding ecosystem, the customers, the workplaces, and the business structures is targeted instead. The core theory. Under the Nordic sandwich model, making sandwiches is technically legal and the sandwich maker is not considered a criminal. Instead, the law focuses on the individuals who buy sandwiches and those who help organize sandwich making. The theory is simple. Eliminate demand and the industry will collapse. In sex work policy, this concept is known as ending demand. In the sandwich world, it translates to an assumption that lunch breaks will somehow vanish if lawmakers strongly disapprove of them. What the law actually looks like. Once written into law, the Nordic sandwich model creates a peculiar legal framework. Making sandwiches is legal, but buying them is illegal. Running a sandwich shop, advertising sandwiches, or renting space to someone making them may also be prohibited. Technically, the sandwich maker is not doing anything wrong. They are simply not allowed to have customers, kitchens, co-workers, landlords, or payment systems. This mirrors the reality of the Nordic model in the adult industry. Sex workers themselves are not criminalized, but clients, workplaces, advertising, and third-party support structures often are. In practice, this means that while the worker is legal, the conditions for their safe work are not. The persistence of demand. Unfortunately for policymakers, people continue to want sandwiches. Construction workers still seek something quick for lunch. Office workers still desire something portable between meetings. Students still look for affordable food between classes. Demand does not simply vanish because lawmakers disapprove of it. As a result, sandwiches move into quieter and less visible spaces. Customers become cautious due to the risk of arrest. Sandwich makers lose the ability to advertise openly or operate visible shops. What used to be a normal lunch counter turns into an informal, hidden transaction. The same dynamic occurs in the adult industry. Criminalizing clients does not eliminate demand for sexual services. It pushes transactions into less visible spaces, where workers have fewer protections. Enforcement theater. To demonstrate that the policy is working, police begin conducting anti-sandwich operations to catch buyers. Press conferences celebrate the number of customers arrested in sandwich stings. Politicians highlight the decline of visible sandwich shops as evidence of progress. In the context of sex work, similar operations are common. Police stings targeting clients are presented as victories against exploitation, even when the underlying market remains largely unchanged. The sandwiches and sexual services do not disappear, they simply become harder to see. When tools become a problem, things become even stranger when tools enter the conversation. Sandwich makers rely on knives, cutting boards, gloves, refrigeration, and clean kitchens. These tools are essential for safe and sanitary food preparation. However, under a system that criminalizes buyers and third parties, maintaining these tools becomes more complicated. A landlord renting kitchen space could be accused of facilitating illegal sandwich activity. A restaurant sharing kitchen space could face penalties. As a result, sandwich makers may end up preparing food in less regulated environments. The outcome, nobody intended. The Nordic sandwich model does not eliminate sandwiches. Instead, it reshapes the industry in ways that push workers into more unstable and less regulated conditions, while allowing policymakers to claim they have taken a principled stand against lunchtime exploitation. The sandwich still exists. It is simply harder to make safely. That contradiction sits at the center of the Nordic model itself. The policy claims to protect workers in the adult industry, yet often dismantles the very conditions, stable workplaces, visible markets, and shared safety infrastructure that allow workers to operate more safely. In other words, the sandwich and the adult industry do not disappear. They simply become harder for the people doing the work to do safely. At Swap Behind Bars, we believe people deserve the same rights, safety, and dignity at work, no matter what kind of labor they do. We are a national network led by current and former sex workers, providing support, advocacy, and resources for people impacted by the criminalization of the sex trade. This series is a thought experiment. We take the arguments often used to justify criminalizing sex work and apply them to other industries to see how they hold up. At times, these comparisons intentionally push toward the edge of the absurd, and we're aware that bordering on the ridiculous is a risk. But that's part of the point. When the logic starts to feel uncomfortable or exaggerated, it often reveals just how inconsistent or selectively applied that logic already is. Our goal is not to trivialize other professions or dismiss the real harms that can exist within them. It's to make those harms visible in a different way, and to ask why criminalization is treated as a solution in some contexts, but not others. History shows that arresting workers does not eliminate risk, exploitation, or poverty. It shifts them, it hides them, it pushes people further away from safety, support, and accountability. This series invites a deeper conversation about labor, autonomy, and what real worker protection actually looks like, especially when we are willing to follow the logic through.